Throughout its history, Toronto would prove to be a haven for many immigrants. People like George Brown, politician, founder of the Globe and Mail, and father of Confederation.
He was the leader of the Clear Grit Party, which was the forerunner to today's Liberal Party. And it was the coalition that he formed with Sir John A. Macdonald and the Conservatives that paved the way for Confederation. This house was built in 1875. It really is a personal expression of George Brown, and that he is a father of Confederation, such an important figure in Canadian politics. It's also a very fine example of a late Victorian house, having features such as the pocket doors between the morning and drawing room, having all of the various shutters intact throughout the building, operating shutters, the encaustic tile floor, the remnants of the garden wall and the cast iron fence. Again, a very unusual feature in Toronto for a private residence, all here and intact.
And it was here that George Brown died after being shot by a disgruntled employee. When the Confederation for which he'd worked so hard rolled around in 1867, Toronto was already a very prosperous city and newly minted provincial capital. 2 years later, the merchant Timothy Eaton came to town and set up shop on Yonge Street, promising goods satisfactory or money refunded, an amazing practice in its day. Impressive buildings started piling up on the waterfront. Many of these original wonders remain. The Traders Bank, the Dominion Bank, and across the street the Canadian Pacific Building, and to the north, the Royal Bank. Meantime, a savvy businessman and dreamer was building his own castle. Sir Henry Pellet had founded the Toronto Electric Light Company, bringing street lighting to the city in 1883. Then he invested in railroads and turned his millions into a mansion called Casa Loma, complete with everything English, from grand battlements to secret passageways. And a museum dedicated to his regiment, the Queen's Own Rifles, a Canadian volunteer militia. He ultimately became Major General and marked their 50th anniversary in 1910 with spectacular generosity, an extravagant week-long pageant at the Canadian National Exhibition, involving 1,200 people, 2 military bands, and reenactments of high points of Canadian history. And he paid for 640 members of the regiment to travel to Aldershot in England for 7 weeks of military manoeuvres, the first regiment to cross the ocean. Sir Henry went on to set up the first hydroelectric generators at Niagara Falls. That's when Adam Beck enters the scene. Beck was an early champion of public ownership of this newfangled electric power. In March 1912, his dream came true. With a flick of the switch, Toronto was ablaze with electrical light. For more information, visit our website on topoftheworld.net.